Just 1 minute ago, shocking news broke that UK banks are moving to ban cash withdrawals, and pensioners are being left completely helpless. Imagine walking into your bank tomorrow and being told you can't take out your own money. Is this the beginning of the end for cash in Britain? Stay tuned because I'll break down everything you need to know right now. And before we dive in, if you care about your pension, your savings, and the truth behind these headlines, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our community. This is the channel that keeps you informed and prepared. In a shocking turn of events that has just broken across the United Kingdom, millions of people, especially vulnerable pensioners, are waking up to a headline that sounds almost unthinkable. The claim spreading like wildfire is that UK banks have effectively banned or restricted cash withdrawals, leaving pensioners feeling helpless and uncertain about how they can access their own money. For decades, Britons have been told that their savings are safe in the banks, that their pensions will be deposited securely every month, and that they can withdraw cash whenever they need it. But now, social media is exploding with rumors that cash access is being restricted, that banks are quietly changing their rules, and that people may not be able to withdraw what is rightfully theirs. This has created a wave of fear, panic, and frustration, with many senior citizens wondering how they will pay for their daily needs if these restrictions are real. The timing of this story is critical because cash remains the lifeline for millions of older citizens in Britain. While the younger generation has moved toward digital payments, smartphones, and contactless cards, many pensioners still rely on physical cash to budget, shop, and feel in control of their money. For them, the idea that their bank might suddenly deny them access to their pension money is terrifying. And this is why the story of banks allegedly banning withdrawals has struck such a nerve. To make matters worse, in recent years, we've seen a massive closure of bank branches across the country. High street names that once had a presence in every town have been shutting down physical locations, citing the rise of online banking. According to financial reports, the UK has lost thousands of branches in the past decade, and ATMs have been disappearing as well. For people in rural areas and elderly citizens who struggle with technology, this has already created enormous difficulties. Now, with whispers that banks might go even further by capping or restricting cash withdrawals, the outrage has reached boiling point. The first wave of panic began when social media posts claimed that as of September 2025, UK citizens would be limited to withdrawing just £200 a week in cash, and that any amount over this would be flagged and reported to the government's Financial Intelligence Unit. This quickly went viral, sparking fears that the government and banks were colluding to limit cash use and track people's financial behavior. Pensioners began calling radio shows, writing letters to newspapers, and flooding online comment sections with anger. Many said they were already struggling with rising living costs, food prices, and energy bills, and now they felt betrayed by the very institutions that are supposed to serve them. But here's where the story gets more complicated. Fact checkers and credible financial experts quickly stepped in to clarify that there is no official law or government directive banning people from withdrawing their own money. The £200 weekly limit story turned out to be misinformation, twisted from discussions about anti-money laundering rules that banks must follow. These rules are designed to catch large, suspicious transactions, not to punish ordinary pensioners trying to take out cash. Still, despite these clarifications, the damage was already done. Once fear spreads, it is hard to stop. Pensioners began questioning whether banks could one day quietly introduce new restrictions without warning, and this anxiety has only grown louder. It's important to understand why people find this story so believable. First, we have to look at the long history of financial scandals and mistrust toward big banks. From the financial crisis of 2008 to the more recent cost of living crisis, ordinary citizens have often felt that banks prioritize profits over people. Branch closures, reduced services, hidden fees, and poor treatment of vulnerable customers have added to this mistrust. For pensioners, many of whom grew up in an era where local banks were part of the community, the sudden shift to impersonal online banking feels like abandonment. Second, we cannot ignore the very real push toward a cashless society. In recent years, governments and financial institutions across Europe have increasingly promoted digital payments. Contactless cards, mobile wallets, and online banking are convenient for some, but for those who are not digitally savvy, This shift feels like being left behind. When pensioners hear that countries like Sweden are almost cashless, they fear the UK is headed in the same direction. And when misinformation about bans on cash withdrawals circulates, it taps into these existing fears. So, what is the actual truth at the heart of this story? The reality is that while banks have not officially banned cash withdrawals, access to cash in the UK is undeniably under threat. The closure of branches and ATMs, combined with the financial pressures on banks to reduce costs, has made it harder for many to get cash when they need it. Pensioners are among the hardest hit because they often prefer in-person services, cash payments, and direct interactions with bank staff. There are also real cases where banks have questioned large cash withdrawals, asking customers why they need the money. While this is framed as a measure to protect against fraud and scams, many pensioners see it as intrusive and controlling. Some have even reported feeling embarrassed or humiliated when bank staff interrogate them about their spending. This has created the impression that banks are discouraging cash use, even if there is no outright ban. The government has attempted to reassure the public by saying that access to cash will be protected. In fact, in 2023, the UK passed legislation requiring banks to ensure people can access cash within a reasonable distance of their homes. This law was meant to guarantee that as society goes digital, no one would be excluded. However, implementation has been uneven, and in practice, many small towns still struggle to provide reliable cash access. The creation of banking hubs, shared facilities where multiple banks offer services under one roof, is one solution being rolled out, but it is happening slowly. For pensioners hearing the latest headlines, these reassurances sound hollow. They don't want to hear about future plans or legislation. They want to know they can walk into their local bank or ATM today and take out their money without fear of rejection or interrogation. Let's also not ignore the psychological impact this kind of news has on older citizens. For many pensioners, money is more than just numbers on a screen. Cash represents independence, dignity, and control. Being able to hold physical notes allows them to budget carefully, to feel secure, and to live life on their terms. When you strip away that sense of control, even through rumors, you create real distress. That's why, even though the story about a total ban on cash withdrawals is false, the fear it sparked is very real. Pensioners across the UK are now questioning whether their financial security is truly safe and whether the government and banks are really listening to their needs. The wider public reaction has been intense. Talk shows, online forums, and community meetings are buzzing with debates about whether this is the beginning of the end for cash. Younger people often dismiss these concerns, arguing that digital payments are faster, safer, and more efficient. But critics say this ignores the millions of people who either cannot or do not want to rely on digital banking. Cybercrime, online scams, and technical outages are constant risks, and many pensioners argue that cash is the only way to guarantee access to money in an emergency. The moment banks or the government appear to discourage cash use, it reinforces suspicions that society is being pushed into a system where every transaction is tracked and controlled. Meanwhile, campaigners are calling for stronger protections. Groups advocating for pensioners' rights are demanding that the government step in immediately to guarantee not just access to cash, but also the right to use it without being treated as suspicious. They argue that the shift toward digital money is being forced on people rather than chosen freely. They also warn that if cash disappears, the most vulnerable citizens, pensioners, low-income families, rural residents, will suffer the most. These campaigners say that headlines about bans and restrictions, even when exaggerated, reflect genuine public concerns that cannot be dismissed. What does this mean for pensioners watching at home right now? It means that while no law currently bans cash withdrawals, they should remain alert to the changes happening around them. Branch closures, ATM shortages, and banking policies may not officially be bans, but they do have the effect of making cash harder to get. Pensioners should also be prepared for situations where banks ask questions about large withdrawals. While frustrating, this is part of existing anti-fraud rules. Understanding your rights, standing firm, and asking for clear explanations can help navigate these uncomfortable situations. The question everyone is asking is whether this is just the beginning. Will the UK one day follow Sweden into becoming almost cashless? Will there come a time when pensioners are forced to rely solely on digital systems they don't trust or understand? Right now, the government says it will protect access to cash, but trust is fragile. Every new headline, every viral rumor chips away at that trust. For pensioners, reassurance is not enough. They need concrete, practical, everyday access to their money. Until that is guaranteed in reality, not just on paper, the fear of being left helpless will remain. And so we return to the breaking headline that started this story: UK banks banning cash withdrawals and pensioners left helpless. While the most extreme version of this claim is false, the fears and frustrations behind it are real. Pensioners are already struggling with higher costs, reduced services, and a society racing toward digital payments. They do not need the added burden of wondering whether their next trip to the bank will end with them being told no. The real crisis here is not a legal ban, but the slow erosion of cash access and the growing sense among pensioners that they are being pushed aside. For those watching this report, it's important to stay informed. Do not fall for every viral rumor, but also do not ignore the real challenges pensioners face. Demand answers from banks, write to your MPs, and make your voice heard. Cash is not just about money. It's about independence, dignity, and freedom. Pensioners deserve the right to access their money, however they choose, without fear, without restrictions, and without being made to feel helpless. And before we close, if you care about updates like these, if you want the truth behind the headlines, and if you want to stay ahead of the stories that matter to pensioners, workers, and families across the UK, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now. Your support means we can continue to bring you the facts, expose the myths, and give you the clarity you need in a world full of confusion. So hit that subscribe button, stay connected, and never miss the updates that could affect your future.